Imagine going through life never asking anyone for money, never borrowing a cent, and yet always having enough to meet every need. How did he do it? George Muller, a man who lived in the 1800s, made this his lifestyle. He cared for over 10,000 orphans, establishing 5 large orphanages. All this without asking a single person for money. But how? Here's the secret. Muller was born in Prussia in 1805. His teenage years were marked by rebellion. He drank, gambled, and even stole from his father. Though he began studying to be a Lutheran minister, his goal was more social status than genuine faith. However, everything changed when he attended a simple prayer meeting. Surrounded by fellow Christians, he felt a profound shift in his heart. It wasn't just intellectual agreement, it was a deep love for Christ. This marked his rebirth, turning him away from his old life of sin and towards a life dedicated to God. But what happened next was even more radical. After moving to England, Muller felt a strong call to serve God in an extraordinary way. Thousands of orphan children were living in terrible conditions, either in brutal workhouses or starving on the streets. While churches ran orphanages, they often charged fees or had strict rules. Muller felt God wanted him to do something no one else was doing, to start orphanages that took in any child in need, providing them with food, clothing, education, and spiritual care, all completely free of charge. This was his response. In 1836, with no money but complete faith, Muller rented a house at 6 Wilson Street, Bristol, and prepared it for 30 girls. On the day they arrived, there was still no money for food or rent. But instead of worrying, Muller gathered his small staff and the children for prayer. And that very morning, a visitor arrived. Moved by their plight, she handed over enough coins to cover their immediate expenses. This was the first of many, many answers to prayer. Muller's life became a cycle of identifying a need, praying specifically for that need, trusting implicitly that God would provide, and then witnessing the miraculous provision that came through prayer. Sometimes it was an unsolicited donation left at the door, like when a woman walking by saw the children playing in the street and asked why they weren't inside eating. When told it was because there was no food, she took them all out for dinner. Other times, it was a letter arriving with money from a stranger who felt prompted by God to send funds. Once when the orphanage was low on supplies, someone brought in enough food for everyone. And sometimes it was Muller personally receiving the funds needed to pay for an upcoming expense, such as when he needed £24 for a pair of shoes and was given a £50 note out of the blue. These miracles continued throughout Muller's life. For instance, he once needed £35,000 to build a new complex, at the time, a colossal sum. But rather than launching a fundraising campaign, he simply prayed. Years later, exactly £35,000 was provided through numerous small gifts. God was faithful. There were also times when Muller could have easily taken out a loan to cover expenses, especially when buying food. But he never did. He firmly believed God would provide. And he always did, often at the last possible moment. Muller's faith was tested regularly, but his trust in God never wavered. Why did Muller live like this? Simply because he wanted to glorify God, show the world that God hears and answers prayer, give destitute children a loving home, and encourage other believers to trust God more. Muller's life serves as a powerful example for us today. In a world that often seems too complex for prayer, he demonstrated that dependence on God, while sometimes difficult, can lead to miraculous provision. His story challenges us to believe God's promises, bring our needs to Him in prayer, wait expectantly for His answers, and praise Him for His faithfulness.